So anything that you want to know about pitching your novel, feel free to ask. And these events are always free, and you can find them on our Chill Subs calendar. So please come to the next one, which will be the Wednesday, the fourth Wednesday of this month. Some of you emailed in some questions beforehand, which I'm really grateful for. So we're going to start with those. And then as questions come in, we'll jump to them in the chat. So we're going to talk primarily about pitching and query letters for novels. You have published 9 novels. Um, how early in the writing process of writing your novel do you start thinking about your pitch? Is it too early to craft your pitch as you're writing the book? Should you wait until you're done? What do you think about that?
Well, I really recommend writing your pitch before you write the novel. I like to think of it as a mission statement for the novel, all right? I even write a query letter before I write a novel because here's the thing, no matter what you do, you're going to have to sell your novel, whether it's traditional publishing or self-publishing. You're going to have to somehow sell it to readers or agents or editors. So, it's good to know that you actually have something that you can convey to them, something hooky, something that will work. So, yeah, I do it. I mean, I know a pitch for my novel before I write a word. And actually, when I craft the pitch, a lot of times I get all kinds of ideas or see a different direction for the novel. So, pretty early.
Do you think that works for everyone? I know some writers will outline their entire novel, and others will just sort of like write and see where they end up. Would you recommend that for both types of writers?
I understand that some people they start with maybe an image or a character. Everybody has a different process, all right? So if it's impossible for you to think of those elements that you have to have in a pitch, beforehand, I understand that. But it's also a good idea to kinda check in as you go along to see, am I really writing something here that has all the elements that a story needs to have? So
I love that. We have a question in the chat. Um, how much worth do in-person pitching events provide for debut authors in the query process?
I think it's excellent, excellent practice, to do those pitch events, and to actually see the reaction, from an agent and get that encouragement. Yeah, yeah, definitely, do it. But, really practice beforehand and make sure you have a solid pitch. So, and we can at some point, whenever talk about the elements of what makes for a solid pitch.
Yeah, and I think I have a couple questions about that coming up. There's another question in the chat. How much of a following would you recommend someone has before they start pitching to publishers? Do you need a big social media follower? Is that something that
Um, Eh, okay, so if you're writing fiction, you really don't have to have a following at all right? I mean, it's definitely a bonus. But if you're writing nonfiction, yes, you have to have, I was in a subgroup today, and, one author got turned down because she 60,000 followers weren't enough. So, that I mean, which sounds crazy, right? But for fiction, you know, you obviously want to have some kind of social media following, but, to show that you are willing to market and so on, but there's no specific number or anything like that. It's a plus, but I study all of the deals every month, and there are plenty of authors that get deals with no platform, so
okay? So, um, what is the most effective way to begin a pitch? Can we talk about crafting it?
yeah, okay, so a pitch contains specific elements, all right? You have a protagonist who has a desire, they want something. And then you have an inciting incident, okay? Something that takes you into the story world, like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, the tornado would be the inciting incident. And then you have obstacles. All right, like the Wicked Witch, so on. And then the stakes. All right. She wants to go home. If she can't go home, then she'll be stuck in Oz forever and, fighting off witches and so on. So those are the very least elements that you need to have in a pitch, and typically you need it to be in one sentence, and it can be a little tricky to craft that because that's a lot to put into one sentence.
Yeah. That it definitely is a lot. So how long should your pitch be? Is it just the one sentence or
Yeah, it really should be because when you're querying and you go on Query Tracker, very often they will ask you for the one sentence pitch. I mean, I'd say 80% ask that. So you really do have to craft it. Oh, and another thing that's kind of important about the one sentence pitch is you don't say the character's name or anything like that. You say like a young woman who was swept up in a tornado. All right. That's just sort of the standard way to do it. And I do recommend for writers to go to Publishers Marketplace and check out some of how agents actually pitch to editors. You'll see those one sentence pitches with those particular elements in there. So,
how would it differ at all if you're pitching fiction versus nonfiction?
oh yes, very much so different. So, a fiction pitch is going to have story elements. All right. Now, memoir would be pitched the same as a novel. All right, the same kind of elements, but nonfiction. Um, And I have to say I'm not as familiar with nonfiction. Fiction is my specialty, but, no, you wouldn't you would, just something catchy, I think, a one-sentence catchy pitch of some whatever is in the book, say, self-help or something like that.
Wonderful. I am scrolling through. There are a couple of great questions in the chat. Um, so, how many followers is enough for a nonfiction person? And does that depend on the quality of the idea?
That's a good question. Um, it depends on a lot of factors, okay? For one, uh, probably, a lot of times they judge engagement of your followers, all right? Are your followers really I mean, suppose you have like I said, this girl that was, in the sub, discussion, she had 60,000, but maybe they weren't engaged. Maybe the comments were low, all right? Maybe, likes and that sort of thing. Um, you really want an audience that let's just put it this way, about 10% of your audience would probably be likely to buy your book. So, you can kinda sort of figure it that way. So the bigger the better, really. There is no number you can, actually say out there, and it depends on a lot of different things, like, if you're doing nonfiction, do you have speaking engagements that you can actually sell books at and so on?
What can you speak a little bit about the general expectations of marketing for authors? And then there's a second part to the question. In terms of percentages, how much is the author responsible for with the marketing versus the publishing company?
That's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it because, the reality is that, authors have to do the bulk of the marketing. It depends a lot on the advance that an author gets. If a book is a lead title and they put a lot of money into it, um, there is going to be, house support for the novel. But even then, sometimes the ball gets dropped, all right? So a novelist should be expected to, do, I would say, um, 80% of the marketing, which is hard. It's hard to learn how to do all of that kind of stuff. At the very least, I mean, you need, like, at least one kind of social media that you feel comfortable in, and, learn a little bit about marketing techniques and things like that. Sometimes some people even hire a publicist, which of course they use their advance money for the publicist. And I know that sounds a little crazy, but if you're a novelist, you're investing in your career. It's like you have to think of yourself as an entrepreneur in some ways, and the publisher is a partner, and they are going to do a certain amount but it could be very little. I mean, okay, so I subscribe to BookScan, which is tells you how much novels sell, and I can tell you that a lot of novels, debut novels, sell like 300 copies, which is a little shocking if you think about it. And an author can really move the needle if they work hard at it.
Yeah. And I would expect with self-publishing that you're doing pretty much all the marketing, but with
Oh, yeah.
traditional publishing, that seems to be the case too. So for a first-time author, would you recommend self-publishing or traditional publishing?
That is a great question. Um, it kind of depends on what you want. Uh, because with self-publishing, you have to do all of the work yourself, and, certain genres do better in self-publishing. The strict genres usually, romance,
Mhm.
mystery. It's harder, like, with women's fiction or literary. Um, there's a big learning curve, and it takes a while. When you self-publish, um you usually have to have several books before you move the needle at all. And series do very well, you know. So what I would recommend is for authors to at least try trad publishing, test the waters there. But it has gotten more increasingly competitive. I will say that once you do self-publish, you do learn a lot about how you have to position yourself. Like, another thing that I always do before I write a novel, I think, "What would the Facebook ad look like?" Because that's how a lot of self-publisher authors get the word out, through Facebook ads. I mean, that's mostly how they do it. But I will say this, you're more likely to make a living as an author, as a self-published author than you are as a traditional author. There's, data to back me up on that. Yeah.
That's really interesting. Do you think if you self-publish, it's then easier to traditionally publish your next book or harder once you have a name as a self-published writer?
Um, I think it might be easier because you'll have more awareness of the marketplace. You'll really understand how you have to position yourself with readers, thus also have to position yourself with editors and agents. You really understand how that you have to, position your book so that it increases in I mean, it makes people interested in it. So that I think is an advantage. But And also what we're seeing in publishing and traditional publishing now is they're acquiring lots of self-published authors, all right, which you didn't used to see.
Okay.
So that's kind of exciting, really. It used to be a real stigma. You didn't wanna you didn't really even mention it in queer letters if you had sometimes a self-published book, something like that. So
So there's that shift happening. That's really interesting.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Recently, there was a book called Theo of Golden, which was self-published, and it did so well, just from word of mouth, and, that Simon& and Schuster scooped it up for millions, I mean, of dollars, and you see that a lot in romantasy authors, you see it in dark romance a lot. I'm seeing all those kind of big deals for these because they've sort of already have a following, and
Mhm.
and they keep their, ebook rights, and the publisher just does the paperbacks or the hardcovers, so,
Interesting. There's a
you know.
question here, I think related to marketing. Are there any particular independent publicists that you recommend?
Oh, that's a good question. No, I don't have particular names. That's not something I've researched in a while, but you would, uh, um, there is one, what is that? Gosh, they're on Substack. I can't, it's Pine something, but I can't remember. I love her. Her name is, oh, I'm sorry, I don't remember the name, but, um, you wanna ask other authors and say, "Hey, how does that work? How did it work for you?" If Be forewarned, though, it can be very expensive.
Mm.
sometimes as much as $25,000. Sometimes you do it, like, by the month, maybe 3,000, 2,000 a month. It depends on what they're gonna do for you, so
Would you say it's worth it?
that is so hard to say. I would say if you're really feeling like in a, career building mode and you got a decent advance, yeah, I would do it. Yep,
Okay.
would.
Yeah.
It
No,
can only
that's
help. Well, see, here's the thing about, uh, the in-house publicist at the, like the one of the big fives, they only do your book for like a month. So if you hire a publicist, then you can extend the reach. They can like get you on podcasts and things like that.
yeah. I
Mm.
I know that we were mostly gonna talk about querying, but I think it's natural for a lot of people to ask about the marketing because I think it's really daunting for writers to market what feels like themselves as a product. And so, I think the idea of getting a publicist is an interesting one because then you have somebody else who's, kind of talking about your work instead of you, and, I can see how it might be hard for some writers to put themselves out there like that with the marketing.
It is, but these days it feels like people are marketing everything.
Mhm.
I mean, it
Yeah,
always does. I mean, I used to be shy about that all the time, and now I'm like, oh no. You know, the way you couch marketing is there are readers who want to read your book. You just have to find them, and they have to find out about it through you. All right, they really want you're doing them a favor,
yeah,
by putting yourself out there, and they'll go, "Oh yeah, that book is for me," because that's how it is. I run Facebook ads all the time, and I know my audience, and I know what they like to see in an ad and what will attract them. So.
yeah. Yeah, and if you wrote it, I mean, there's so many more books that exist in the world than what one person can read, and people just need a reason to,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so going back to querying, there's a question in the chat. What kind of timeline are most people looking at between querying and pitching and actually getting a publishing contract and then the book coming out?
Wonderful question. Um, Querying takes a lot longer than it used to. Um, I'd say allow for a year for querying. Um, Agents used to be quicker, but I think uh, that so many people are writing books that they're really deluged. They get a deluge, yeah, that's it, of letters all the time. I mean, emails rather, and it's hard to manage. And so, yeah, I would, and you want to do it in batches to see how you're being responded. So, I would allow a year, and then mm, once you do get an agent, it could take another year to be on sub. That is also longer than it used to take, much longer. After the pandemic, a lot of, editors, um, quit their jobs, and they were never replaced. So, it really they are just, uh, overwhelmed, with work. So it can take a long time, and then, then it takes another year or a year and a half for it to get to print. So you can be talking like 3, 4 years between querying and seeing your book on a shelf. That's why a lot of people have turned to, self-publishing because it's so much quicker,
Right.
obviously. Yeah.
We have a question. Jimena says, I worry my book might not be as marketable compared to others. Do you think that a great pitch will help with selling the concept to agents and publishers?
Well, you sometimes have to be creative, you know, um, with your pitch. It's hard to know without, seeing the actual book, but you have to I read an agent's Substack recently, and she said, "We don't always know how to pitch it. So you have to teach us how to pitch it. You have to look for your niche or your audience and say, this is who's going to want to read my book." and you nobody knows it better than you do. So you look for that one thing, and it could be theme, it could be setting, something that will grab readers. So,
If you self-published a book that didn't sell well, would that hurt you with trying to pitch to traditional publishers later?
no, no. I mean, you probably I mean, they don't know what you sold. They now when you publish with a traditional publishing company, that is common knowledge. It can be looked up, but they have no idea what you sold or didn't sell. And you don't have to tell them. I mean, they'll look at you as a debut novelist, even though you may have self published. Anyone that is in traditional publishing for the first time is considered debut, no matter how many self published novels they've had. So,
Fascinating. There's someone in the chat. Thank you so much to the couple people who have found it, Paulina and Leah. It's Pine State Publicity. Was that
oh,
the publicist you were
thank
talking about?
Thank you. I like her so much. Yeah,
Thank
Cassie,
you
her
for
name
that.
is. Uh, I know she's very particular about what she takes on, but she does a great job. And a friend of mine um, hired her to, and just loved her. So yes, that's the only one I could, recommend with certainty. So yeah,
What are your thoughts on hybrid publishers?
that is excellent question. I they're very expensive. All right, you have to really research that. Um, I know some people are paying, like $25,000 and so on. You could do it a lot less if you sort of cherry pick, right? Like you hire your own cover designer, you hire your own developmental instead of doing a package. However, there are some people that like the fact that certain hybrid publishers will have a distribution with the big five, which means there's the possibility of it getting into bookstores. It's not guaranteed or anything, but there is that possibility. All the same, if you go on something called Ingrid Sparks, if you're self-published, you could also probably get into bookstores. It all depends if the bookstore orders your book or not. So um I think if you have that kind of money lying around, it might be a possibility, but I really think you could do it cheaper
Sure.
without a hybrid. And again, you have to really research those because some of them are very exploitive and they're just in it for the money. There's so many people that want to take advantage of authors out there, and I don't know if you're aware of Writers Beware. You can always check in, yeah,
Yeah,
with
definitely a
them.
great resource.
Yeah.
And I know that the conversation around traditional and self-publishing is so big right now. I'm sure we'll come back to more questions like that, but I want to ask you more about query letters.
Okay.
So, um, first off, how would you pitch a book that is maybe blurs the genre lines or writes across the genres? Do you have any suggestions for how you might query that?
Oh, well, genre blends are really hot right now. So that's actually a great pitching point. Uh, Horror romance
Mhm.
and romance mystery and anything with romance always makes it better for some reason. But well, it's the
I
most
think
popular genre. It's the
it
most
is
popular.
the most popular. Yeah.
And so it is not a disadvantage. You would pitch it just like you would pitch any other genre, and you would say, "Well, I am a genre blend of this and that." Um, and then in your query letter, of course, you want to have you. There's probably a dominant genre that you want to take the tone of. Like if it's
Mhm.
horror, romance. Well, usually, let's just say romance horror because that's more common. Um, it tends to be light horror, and so you would take a light tone there. So, but no, that's actually an advantage these days. There's so many genre blends. Everybody's talking about, oh, we want genre blends. So,
Well,
yeah.
that's good to know. We had another question that was emailed in. Um, about if your book fits both genres, is it better to pitch in upmarket or women's fiction, for example?
Upmarket, yes, great question. Yes, this is a topic that's been bandied about on Substack, and, agents are saying they're just pitching it as a upmarket instead of women's fiction. Women's fiction, Publishers Marketplace has dropped it as a category. It's, it is just has not been selling as much. So, yeah, definitely upmarket. Yeah, yeah, so would
Okay.
yeah.
Um, for other genre specific things, if it's YA, for example, um would you want a content warning? Would that be necessary?
You know, I've
And
yeah, yeah, yeah. I've heard agents say they want trigger warnings. Yeah, uh-huh. You know, if it's like, particularly in the pages. Yeah,
and
I
if
don't think you could scare anybody in a query, but you could say attach you know, usually a lot of times when you're querying, they ask for, okay, send me the first 10 pages or send me the first 20 pages. And at the end, you could say attached are 20 pages and I want to present the following, you know, trigger warnings about it. Yeah. So,
that's helpful. And I'm sorry, I asked half the question. It was for YA, if there's a scene with not explicit but still sexual violence, do you need a content warning? So I just wanted to clarify that. So you're saying a content warning is
yeah,
yeah. Okay.
definitely. Yeah. But
Um,
I would also say, you know, and you shouldn't be afraid of that because if you're querying an, agent who takes dark romance, they know, I mean, that there's going to be, disturbing elements typically, you know, because that's part of the genre, so,
for sure.
yeah.
Um, there's a question that was sent in from someone who has written a women's fiction novel, and they say it's not high concept. There's romance, but it's not the focus. The female friendship is. How would you craft this pitch to sound more interesting to agents?
Oh, I love that. The reason I love it is because I write women's, friendship. I always do that. Well, you're it's, um part of your pitch is I mean, the pitch is really gonna be what dependent on what's going on in the story, right? So without knowing specifics, I can't really tell you. But I will say this, part of your pitch is comps. So you wanna, make sure that you find the right comps that highlight that women's fiction, you know, in some way. Yeah, no, and that's a category that people love, so
Mhm.
and, so yeah, but without knowing the story specifics, like, it's hard to tell you how to pitch it really, so,
Do you
yeah.
have any suggestions for comps? We have a question about that. Someone says, other than relatively recent and not top of the charts, canonical bestsellers, how do you pick comps for a query letter? Is it more important to give a sense of themes, content, or style? Do comps even matter that much compared to blurbs and pages?
Okay. Comps are extremely important. That's a wonderful question, and, they're extremely important, and I'm gonna tell you why, is because when, um, an agent takes your, uh novel out to editors. An editor is considering it. They have to draw up what's called a profit and loss statement. And in that profit and loss statement, they must have titles that are the comp titles. And they'll say, well, this title sold such and such. And this title also sold such and such. And the one this a manuscript we're considering, then we could expect it to sell this. That's why they have to be recent, all right? Because like within 3 years. And that's why they're so important. It's not really I'll be honest, it's not really fair to the author because how is an author going to know exactly how well a book sold? But you can kind of look at the amount of Goodreads reviews and that sort of thing to give you a sense, you know, if it was popular or not. And, you know, it's just good old fashioned research. You look at books you go on Amazon and say, like, if you they have a women's fiction friendship category. So you look at books and say, "Oh, that might be like mine," or "That might be like mine," and so on. And I don't know how people AI is great for it, to say, "Hey, this is my book. These are my themes. These are my settings." All those things are important. You can use all of those for comps. Anything can be used for comps, all right? And say, "Give me some comps," within the last 3 years. So,
So when you're choosing comps, you want to choose books that did well. Um,
mm,
is it is the do you want to stay away from the books that are like, the
oh,
Harry Potters of
blockbusters,
the
right?
world and things like that?
Yeah.
Would that
Yeah.
hurt you if you included those?
Yeah, typically you don't include, like, say, something like lessons in chemistry or, outlier books
Mhm.
because, so you no, those would not be your, strict comps that you would include. However, you can use some of those kind of comps for, and even movies or TV shows for what I call vibe comps.
Yeah.
Um, so Like, you could say, "My novel pitched as Steel Magnolias meets, Gilmore Girls," or something, which are, shows and a play, uh, that's vibes, all right? And then at the end and then after your pitch, you can just talk about the comps. And usually, you qualify your comps. Like you say, it has the themes of this and the emotional resonance of this, or, compare it in that kind of way, typically. So you explain why you have picked that comp, in other words.
If you have an agent, are they doing all this work for you, and do you recommend going through an agent, or should you be pitching, your work yourself?
No, an agent is going to be looking for this from you. All right. You know, Agents, they have, like, they usually take 5 seconds to look at each query or so, something like that, and they're looking at the pitch, and they're looking for the comps. They're looking for those things. If you don't have them, they just move on. They don't wanna have to go, "Okay, what would this" unless it's something they're really looking for or something like that, you hit some kind of, note with them. They want all of that stuff from you. So it does require a lot of research, sadly.
So, we've had questions sent in both about pitching to agents and pitching to editors, to the publishing companies. Um, is it your experience that you can pitch directly to publishing companies, or do you always have to go through an agent?
Um, no, there's plenty of publishing companies that, take unagented submissions, and, I believe there's this, website Authors Publish, and they often I think that's the name of it,
Mm,
put out are you familiar?
yeah,
Yes?
mhm, yeah,
Okay, good, good, good. They have a, list of, small publishers, and they even rate them and so on. So yeah, no, you can definitely, pitch small publishers without an agent. Yeah.
definitely. And I know on Shell Subs, we have, a pretty big database of independent presses too, and a lot of them don't accept agented submissions. They only
Yeah.
accept, um submissions from the writer. Let's see. There was another question about agents specifically. Oh, how reliant are agents in finding authors by attending writing conferences? Is there a point to going to the writing conferences to find an agent?
I think so, yeah. Why not make the connection, Agents are much nicer in person than they are when you're just a, a anonymous person in their inbox. So to make that connection, when I first started writing, I went to a writers conference and it really changed everything for me. It made me understand how competitive things were and all of that. So I totally recommend it, and I totally recommend connecting with agents and talking to them, and it makes you feel a part of that world, and that's so important. You know, when we're trying to get break into the world, we feel like imposters sometimes, and so the more familiar we become, the more comfortable we are, we we start believing in it, that this can happen for us, so,
When you
yeah.
when you meet agents at writing conferences, are you pitching your novel right away? How do you recommend making a good impression?
Well, they do have pitch events, so you definitely wanna sign up for that, and otherwise, just wanna be really casual like you would be with anybody, ask them about themselves and so on, you know, um don't make it awkward. No, don't sell,
Mm.
just be comfortable with them. A friend of mine went to a conference recently and she didn't talk about anything and she was just chit chatting, making small talk with the agent. And the agent finally said, "Well, what are you writing? I'm interested." And she said, "I like that." And she said, "Well, I want you to send it to me when you're done." So,
That's
yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Like a cocktail party,
Yeah.
but at a
Yeah.
convention center.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Just relaxed, right? They're people. No
mm,
no putting stuff under in the ladies' restroom.
Not on
Danger.
their windshield under their windshield wipers in the parking lot or
Yeah.
something. There's a question in the chat for trilogies and series. Are there different requirements than for a standalone novel when you're querying or pitching?
Well, certain things almost always certain genres lend themselves to series like mysteries, and often romanticises are as well, or a duology, they might, lend themselves to that. So, if you envision your book as a series, I usually would recommend saying, it stands alone, but has serious potential. I would just put a sentence like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
What about pursuing different publishing houses? Are there benefits to going with a small indie press versus the traditional five? Or do most people try the traditional five and then the big five and then go to the smaller presses?
Yeah, that's usually the typical order of things. People, they exhaust the big five and then they decide to go with the smaller publishers. And I have to say, if it's a good small publisher, oh gosh, so I had a book with Henry Press, which isn't around anymore, but I just loved the experience. I felt they were so accessible. If I didn't like a cover, I could complain about it, and the financials were very above board and everything. Big 5 publishers, they're not trying to be it's not like they're sneaky or anything, but they're just not really transparent about a lot of things. They don't tell you things, and you feel I don't know, there's an intimidation factor sometimes about, um, asking someone at Simon& and Schuster, "Well, I don't like the back cover copy," or something like that. I mean, actually, your agent's supposed to handle that sort of thing, but still, I really enjoyed that cozy relationship, and I was very happy there. I was sad that they left, I mean, that they went out of business. But that said, you really do have to research these smaller publishers. Look them up on Amazon, look at their books, see what the covers look like. Sometimes I see covers from smaller publishers that look worse than well, actually much worse than self-published novels because self-published novelists are gotten really good about good covers and so on. So
What do you think about AI covers? There's a lot of self-published writers that use them, and there's a lot of opinions about it. So I just
Yeah. I would probably avoid them because Amazon asks you if you did an AI cover, um, right now, and, and I think they look like they have a look. Now, um, uh using AI elements, then that might be different, you know what I mean? Just little tiny elements or something like that, but no, a entire AI cover, I don't know if I would do that. I haven't I have a lot of friends who self-publish, and I don't see that a lot. So,
That's good. It's good
yeah.
when people use real artists. Uh,
Yeah.
what do you think is the hardest category to sell or to pitch?
So what? I'm sorry, I
The
missed that.
hardest genre. Uh,
Mm. Oh, there was a Substack about this recently, and they said, okay, so literary is the hardest.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's just a hard sell, but you can always sell it because they need those prestigious. I mean, they buy a certain amount. You need those prestigious books, but they're hard to pitch. Very often quiet. Um, Sci-fi seems to be tough these days. All right. Um, and contemporary romance is kind of down in trends, particularly rom-coms. You know, they just got oversaturated. So, um, cozy mysteries. It's almost like if you have a cozy mystery, you have to self-publish it. They really aren't. They just kind of quit doing those. So, those are some off the bat. Yeah.
That's that's really interesting. That literary is one of the hardest categories.
Well, let me tell you a little something about literary, which is that uh, there's certain imprints that have to have it because that's all they do.
Mm.
And what I'm seeing is they're taking some of that women's fiction space. I see a lot of literary family stories, which you don't see so much in the upmarket space anymore. But um, but as a literary author, you really do have to have the credentials. You really have to have the publications in those prestigious literary, mags and probably an MFA at the very least. So, they expect that kind of thing in that realm. So, yeah.
That definitely makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, would your how would your pitch sound for literary fiction? If it's a quieter, if there's not as much, um, if the plot or the movement of the book is quieter than maybe a genre book.
Yeah, I really would. I'd really focus on a good bio, and anything that's if it's in the zeitgeist, you often have a lot of literary novels in the zeitgeist, like they're talking about, maybe, Gaza or something like that. I would play up that, or a different culture. You see that a lot. But still story elements, just that you've got it, there's gonna be some kind of conflict. So you still use those for a pitch, but yeah, in a literary novels, if you look in Publishers Marketplace, they'll say like, front and center, this is Iowa grad, or something like that. So and then they go into the pitch. And then finally they talk about thematic elements in literary fiction more than they do in genre. But I want to caution authors in not to use thematic pitches if they're genre or upmarket. That is always a mistake. Don't say, "Oh, this is a novel about secrets and family dynamics and things like that," because that doesn't differentiate your novel from hundreds and hundreds of other novels. The specifics are in you want specifics, and that's in the story elements, so.
That's super helpful. What about blurbs? There's a question in the chat. At what point in the writing process would you try and seek a blurb from a well-known individual? Um,
Ooh, great question. You know, um, if you know somebody, right, who, is, an author and you're friends with them, hey, would it hurt to put that in your query letter? No, not at all. But I wouldn't ask for it, I would definitely not contact an author you didn't know for that. Um, uh, because it's just because I get so many blurb requests that, you know, without knowing that the book is gonna sell, they'll almost certainly say no. But
Interesting.
I have had agents ask me to get blurbs to go on sub, which I resented, but I did it, you know? So so some agents will ask you that, "Hey, you know anyone? Get" so we can put some, blurbs out there, to
It
help sell that book. Yeah,
it seems like a thing that writers just do for each other, like
they
it's
do.
their responsibility to each other, but I
It's
suppose you get big enough, you get a lot of requests.
Oh, yeah, oh, you do, and it's all in who you know. I mean, most people get blurbs because, their agent knows the author or their editor knows the author, and, so it's all in who you know, it's kinda fake. I mean, what? You're gonna tell your friend you're not gonna blurb it or you're not gonna, um, give them a good blurb? Of course you are, we all do it, so yeah. It's kind of a pain, to be
Yeah.
honest. Yeah.
So there's a question here about pitch events. Sorry, I'm squinting because the comments are so small. This person says, this is from Andrew. I'm signed up for a pitch event this March, but only starting draft two. I had three interested last year when I only had a zero draft. Am I crazy to try to remind them of discussing something that intrigued them a year ago?
No, no, remind them. Yeah, no, absolutely. I hear agents saying that all the time. Don't feel bad if it's been a long time. Just remind them of what happened and yeah, they'll still likely be interested. Not a problem at all. It happens all the time. Yeah. So,
What do you think of pen names, and what suggestions do you have for bios with a pen name?
um well, a lot of people who write romance use pen names because they have regular jobs and they don't want that to mix up professional lives. So in that case, and everybody knows that that's a standard thing. Another reason for using a pen name is if you had a novel and it didn't do very well, it's
Mhm.
called your track. All right, your track record, and then you want another shot, and editors will say, "Well, look at her track record." So that your agent will say, "Hey, she'll use a pen name." All right, because what happens is when the when the people that sell to the bookstores say, "Hey, I want this author. How many copies do you want of this book?" They'll say, "Well, we didn't sell very many copies of her book the last time, so we're not going to order very many," and that's not a good thing. So that's why a lot of times people use pen names for those two reasons. Yeah.
You just reinvent yourself every time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can do that. See, if we were actors, singers, we couldn't do that. We can do that. We're
Oh,
disguises. I had a novel in a pen name, so yeah.
oh, that's
Yeah,
fascinating.
yeah.
Just one of the 9 were under a pen name?
Yeah, 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 but I took it back to my name, but, yeah, I went out of genre and, when I was with Simon& and Schuster, and they told me to use a pen name, so I did.
Can I ask what that genre was?
It was just like a novel set in heaven. They thought that was
Mm,
kinda weird. I mean, kind of off my brand, so, yeah.
sure. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Going back to genres, Susie is wondering, do you consider Louise Penny a cozy mystery writer? Is her genre
Oh, that's a good question, I know, I don't feel well, um, would we call it a procedural maybe? Uh, I don't really read her. I know what she writes. I think hers are not, uh if there's a body and there's blood, and there's any description of that, it's not cozy. So if you're familiar, it's like the murder always takes place off screen and it's not scary or anything that would be cozy. So probably not. I look at her covers. I've seen her covers and they don't read cozy to me. They read
okay.
more mystery. Yeah. Yeah. And of course, she can write whatever she wants. I mean, she's been established. There are cozy mysteries still being published by Big Five, but they usually established. Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions for how to pitch a YA novel?
Um, YA is a tough category right now. I don't. A lot of YA authors are making the switch to adult because it's so tough. But it depends again on the genre, you know. Without specifics, I couldn't really tell you how to pitch it. Um, I would need specifics, but I will say it is a little bit tougher. YA and middle school are tough categories right now. They didn't
Uh,
used to be. It used to be so hot. Everybody it's so funny because adult novelists went switching to YA and now they're switching back, so,
Would
yeah.
would you say that the younger generation is reading less than they used to? Is that
Yeah.
accurate?
Yes. And boys in particular,
Mhm.
much less. Um, when I say younger generation, I'm talking, like, because right now the book talk people, like the young women, they are reading a lot. I think they read the most. But yeah, below 18, less less so.
So maybe
Um,
we need to write more of it and give them more compelling things to read to turn that around.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, they will read stuff if it's something that they like this. uh there's this guy, what is he? A middle school author that is very popular. I forget who he is. I shouldn't have mentioned it because I can't remember, but, wildly popular. Underpants Man or something, something like that.
I think I know what you're talking about. My kid is too young for that, for now, but, so Jackie was wondering she was the one, asking about the YA novel,
Yeah.
and she says, or he sorry, Jackie, I'm not sure which you are, but historical or World War II setting for YA.
Yeah, that's gonna be even tougher, really. Uh, that got saturated, the World War II market. Uh, I mean, I would definitely try it, of course. You never know. You know what I mean? But again, like I said, it's what happens. What is the main event there, in the novel, and the obstacles and the stakes. And of course, in a World War II novel, there's a lot of stakes, because it usually means life or death or something like that. So that's not a problem. But yeah, it will be a hard sell. You just pitch it like you would any other kind of novel, with the elements that I've discussed. Yeah.
Someone else is suggesting, would you pitch it as a crossover? If it has crossover potentials, would you pitch it that way to, help it sell rather than it
Yeah.
solely
I
looking
mean,
at
it always says crossover potential is always, something that you can mention. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So I would mention it. Yeah. In the query. Yeah.
what about for sci-fi? If it's harder to pitch right now, what would you single out to help it sell?
A romance would help.
Okay, that's good.
you know, it's people are rabid sci-fi fans. I just not seen a lot of deals with sci-fi lately. I don't know what it's like on the self-published front. It's interesting because self-published, it's like self-published novels have taken over some genres,
Yeah.
and and now they're considered to be sort of not the domain of trad publishing anymore. So
I see we only have about 5 minutes left, but I wanted to ask, there were some really thoughtful questions that were emailed in, and one of them is, has crafting your writing with publication in mind changed how or what you write?
oh, wonderful question. Yes, it has, because I just wrote whatever I wanted to before. That was fun. I like that. But no, I do think of the market now. And I know so much. I actually wrote Substack newsletter that said the author who knows too much. I feel like in some ways that's been a disadvantage to me because I know what sells and what doesn't. And so, yeah, I do think about that. But then, but that said, if I'm not interested in it, I'm not. It has to be personally matter to me for me to write it. So, but yeah, no, I think of high concept. Is it high concept? Is it and I think about how it would be sold. So yes, sadly.
Do you ever write things anymore without thinking about publishing them?
Um, no.
Mhm.
But I would say this. Because I've written so many novels, I love it so much. I'm addicted to writing novels. Uh, I would do it if no one ever read it again. I like it so much. I like figuring out. To me, a novel is like a puzzle. It's like a big Wordle or something. Or
Yeah.
I just like Wordle's not a good example, but just figuring out how it's all gonna fit together. I love that. I mean, it's a great exercise. I could spend, hours doing that. It's very addictive.
Um, do you think 70 is too old to get a debut novel published?
No. No, not at all. There's lots of stories, of older people, publishing novels, like the Theo Golden that I mentioned, that's, like, huge bestseller. I think the guy was in his 70s. And then, Lessons in Chemistry, I think she was 65, not 70 yet, but no, it's never too late. Do it. Yeah, gosh.
I think a writer's just getting good at
Yeah,
70.
I mean, you've got yeah, just think you have all these, life experience to bring to the page for sure. Yeah.
Um, if you're an older writer, what audience do you recommend writing to? What demographic? Um,
Oh, yeah. Well, if you go to any book signing, you will see that most of the people in the audience look like me. They're my age, and, they are a very big demographic, and they like everything. They like all kinds of things. Upmarket is a big category for them. They love mysteries. They, um, they like novels with romantic elements. I don't know that they want, like, spicy or anything like that, but, yeah, so just about anything they enjoy, and that's a it's a I always say that that particular demographic is kind of ignored a little bit by publishers, because they're so focused on book talk, audience and all. So
yeah. So we have about 2 minutes left. I wanna see, um, do you have any writer conference recommendations? And this is specifically from someone in Toronto, but, it for just the rest of our audience. Any writer conferences you really like?
oh, that is a great question. Well, I'm in Savannah, so I think regionally, and I like the Atlanta Writing Conference, which you can do via Zoom, I believe, as well, so that's always good. But, and yeah, that's the only one that I can totally recommend because 'cause I've done, so yeah.
What about
Yeah.
AWP?
Oh! Yeah, I'm sorry, I should say. That is a great conference.
Is it?
Wow. Oh my gosh, everybody should do that. It is mostly, directed at literary, authors, but oh, yeah, oh boy. They have so many panels, it's wonderful. I would recommend any writer to go that, yeah. Thank you so much for mentioning it, yeah, yeah.
That's fantastic. That's good to know, and that's, gosh, coming up, really soon, right? So,
Yeah, Baltimore,
right.
March, I think, yeah,
Mhm.
right? Are you going?
I think so. I think this will be my first year going. I know,
Yeah.
others in the chill subs world have gone, but I'm newer to.
Oh, you're gonna love it. It's great. Yeah, great conference. Yeah.
Mhm.
Huge, overwhelming, but in some ways, it's the one of the biggest. Yeah.
Right. Michelle says, "Great for connections."
Yeah. Definitely, definitely. I would love to present there, actually. Haha.
Well, I hope you do one day, and I hope to get to it. This
Yeah.
has been such an insightful hour spent with you. I would love to do it again sometime. I hope everybody at home that asked questions got a lot out of our time together because I think this was just so wonderful. Thank you so much for your time and
Thank
your
you for
expertise.
having me. I really appreciate it. I love talking about these things, so, yeah.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you, Karin
Thank
Gillespie,
you.
for all your generous insight. We hope to see
Thank
you
you.
soon. Bye,
Bye.
everyone.